Call to order. We'll do a roll call starting on the right.
Michael Savoy.
Jose Campos.
Luz Molina Lopez.
George Van Millet.
Nancy Corrigan.
Mary Jiang.
Katrina Salazar.
Dan Jacobson.
Alicia Berha.
Okay, the CBA's mission is to protect consumers by ensuring only qualified licensees practice public accountancy in accordance with established professional standards. This mission is derived from the statutory requirement that protection of the public shall be the highest priority for the California Board of Accountancy in exercising its licensing, regulatory, and disciplinary functions. Whenever the protection of the public is inconsistent with other interests sought to be promoted, the protection of the public shall be paramount. You may notice that our board members are referencing tablets during the meeting. Tablets allow board members to more easily access meeting materials and are not being used to discuss, deliberate, or take action on any item within the board's jurisdiction. Members, please remember to pull your microphone close so when speaking, members of the audience will be able to hear your comments. Agenda item A, discussion of annual officer elections. At its November meeting, the CBA will elect a president, vice president, and secretary-treasurer. The president, vice president, and secretary-treasurer serve one-year terms and may not serve more than 2 consecutive terms. CBA members who wish to be considered for leadership position should submit a statement of qualifications to Rebecca Reed, Board Relations Analyst, by October 11th, 2019. Moving on to agenda item B, discussion of process for annual executive officer evaluation. Each year, the CBA president and vice president issue a performance evaluation to the executive officer. The evaluation will be based upon input from all CBA members. Members should complete an evaluation form, which is included with this agenda item and will also be sent electronically by staff next week. The form offers feedback regarding the executive officer's performance and will be used during a closed session discussion at the November meeting. During the closed session discussion, members will have an opportunity to discuss the completed evaluation forms and finalize the performance evaluation. I ask that members complete the evaluation form and email it or mail it directly to me by October 11, 2019. The Department of Consumer Affairs direct report on departmental activities is contained in your materials. This is a written report only. There will not be any comments on that at this point. We are going to then move to item 3, ahead to item 3 in the agenda, and hear the report of the Secretary Treasurer, Ms. Corrigan, and we will come back to the report of the Vice President later.
Thank you, Mr. President. So if you look in your materials, and I believe also in your folders, some additional information was provided by staff. We're now looking at year-end 2018-19. As a reminder, 17-18 is still preliminary, and I imagine 18-19 will be as well, since with the fiscal software and some reconciliation issues that are ongoing. But hopefully, we're told that maybe by our November meeting, the 2 years would be completed for us to look at just a little bit further. So on page 2, line 49 of my report, you can see that actual expenditures through the 12-month period, June 30th, 2019, are $13,954,000, or 96% of the budget. Now, there are still projected costs. These are the costs that staff know about, but projected costs would take us closer to $14,312,000, meaning that the surplus for the year would be about $190,000. When we were looking at the 10-month period, we were talking around $163,000, $165,000. So as they fine-tune the information, do the best that they can with the information that they receive, we're projecting the year-end surplus to be about $190,000. Now, I'm also aware that there's a discrepancy between the annual report that Ms. Bowers will go over later in her section and some of this information that's been prepared at different times. But, so if you're looking at that or you caught something, you know, we can discuss that a little bit further. So pretty much this is the information we've been seeing it from meeting to meeting. And if we go to page 6 of the report and we look at the months in reserve, we're still looking at the year closing at approximately 15.7 months, which is a concern to us and something that we're working on in connection with fee levels. So that's kind of ongoing, and noting that those two columns will change again as the information actually comes, the reconciliations are completed, and we actually have final information. So remains to be seen. Hopefully we'll do better than the 15.7, but that's really tough. So our budget for next year is $16,096,000. What we have been expecting, what we've been hearing, you know, as far as getting our reports and our updates. Unless there are questions from anybody or questions of the staff who compile the information, that really is my report.
Any questions from the board? Okay. I guess we'll move on to agenda item 4. And we'll hear the report of the executive officer.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a brief update on staffing. On some key positions. I wanted to let members know that we are still in the process of recruiting for a new chief of our licensing program. I'm hopeful that we'll be able to conclude that process no later than the end of this year. In the interim, Mr. Franzella, our chief of enforcement, and his management team has been assisting with oversight of the licensing division day-to-day operations, and so my appreciation to his team, and hence the reason he'll be giving the licensing division report later today. And then also I still am recruiting for a new secretary so that Allegra Keefe, my current secretary, can move on to a very well-deserved promotion within our office. And I'm hopeful that that will occur much sooner than the end of the year. So as far as staffing, that concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions. With President Familot's permission, I'll move on to the next item, item 4B.
Please.
This agenda item provides information on the present and future fees associated with online credit card transactions. Let me begin by saying that no specific action is needed on this item unless it is determined that online users, instead of the CBA, should pay the fees associated with online credit card transactions. At the July meeting, information was presented regarding the acceptance of credit cards for online license renewal payments. At that time, members were provided 2 models for consideration. The first was having the CBA pay the fees associated with online credit card transactions. The second model, referred to as the convenience fee model, has the customer, or in our case, the licensees, paying the transaction fee. The CBA opted to go with option 1, with the CBA paying the fee. Since implementation of online credit card for license renewal last year, the CBA has paid approximately $9,700 in processing fees. This is an average usage rate of 13% of all renewals processed each month and an average processing fee of 2.1%. It's anticipated that credit card usage for license renewal will increase as time goes by and as we begin collecting email addresses. Attachment 1 provides the estimated cost for the online credit card transactions for license renewal in fiscal year 2019-2020. The projection includes the renewal fee increase that will go into effect in January and a projected 20% increase in participation. As the CBA prepares to expand online credit card payment options to applicants applying for the exam and individuals applying for licensure, the fees associated with credit card transactions will increase as well. Attachment 2 provides the projected cost for fiscal year 2020-21, not only for license renewal, but also applicants for the CPA exam and initial licensure. Beginning on the bottom of page 3 of your materials, we have provided the usage rate of other DCA boards and bureaus for online license renewals. 2 of the boards are currently passing the transaction fee on to the users, while the others are paying the fees directly. When reviewing the available data, the usage rates between the boards that pass the fee on to the users and those who pay the transaction fees are very comparable. Once again, if members determine that the CBA should continue to pay the transaction fee for all transactions, a motion is not required. However, should the CBA determine it would prefer to change to the convenience fee model with licensees and applicants paying the credit card fees, then action on this item would be necessary. This concludes my report. At this time, I'll turn it back over to President Famelot, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Yes.
So if we were to move it over to where the consumers or our CPAs or those applying for licensure to pay for the fees credit card wise, could the consumer also pay by check as well, or is that done?
Yes, they would still be able to pay by check regardless, and the credit card would be only those who opt to apply online, then they would have the advantage of using a credit card.
Okay.
Yes.
With credit card payments, do we tend to get payment faster than by check? In other words, are we gathering more money quicker?
Yes, I would say it would definitely be quicker. When they send a check into the board for payment, it either comes to us directly, it's cashiered in office, and then submitted to the department for final processing, or they have the option, they can use a PO box. In those instances, it would go to the department's cashiering office. They would process it. So I think the credit card transaction, yes, we would receive that sooner.
Since it is quicker and thus gets to the bank or wherever quicker, I would assume that there's at least some added interest. Is there a way that we can, is there a methodology for the controller or someone to pay us that added interest?
Not that I'm aware of, but I certainly could look into that with the department. I'm not familiar with the process for them doing that.
Thank you.
Yes.
The fees that the CBA is currently paying, they are paid to our vendor, Elevon, correct?
Correct.
Do we expect to continue paying them to Elevon? Is there any option to look for another vendor that perhaps may be more cost-effective?
We contract on, I believe it may be a 2-year contract with Elevon. I think it's up at the end of this year. And so certainly as we move forward in contracting, we could look at the fees charged. I believe they're fairly consistent, but we certainly could take that into consideration.
Hi. So I believe that the contract that the CBA has is through the Department of General Services, and we're using their contract. I'd have to double check, but from what I remember, we need to use the same vendor as Department of General Services under these circumstances. I will verify, but my recollection is that we need to use Elevon, and also that their fees are consistent with the industry standard, if I recall correctly.
Do you have a feeling that we will continue to use Elevon after the 2-year contract?
You know, I don't know, but I can look into it. I can ask around, but I'm not in the loop on that, but I'll find out.
Other questions? Yes.
This is Katrina Salazar. So my question is, If we flash forward to a future where everything is done online, which is clearly not where we are, I think the fees are today not significant to our total budget, but let's say we fast forward to a day when everybody does this and that's how everything gets renewed, 10 years down the road. It will be a 2% roughly. It will always be a fee. There's always a processor fee. Whatever the negotiated fee is, there will be a cost. It could be 2% of our budget, which is not insignificant in that scenario. So I think my question is for Patty. If we continue down this path, would we be able to ever consider the cost of processing when we set our fees at future dates? Because my concern is that we have an element of the budget which is out of our control and that may, whether or not we can view it when it comes to fee setting. I'm sensitive to reserves and where we are and just making sure we have enough money to operate going forward. So are we allowed to do that? Should it become significant to us?
I think that will occur, actually. We're in the process right now of securing a vendor to do a fee analysis, and when that vendor looks at our fees, they'll look at all of them. And so we'll look at all application processing, and that would be one of the items that they would take into account. We're trying to secure a contract now, and then hopefully would have that fee analysis sometime early next year is what we're projecting right now.
Okay, additional questions?
I have something to add. So currently, I think it's great that they're getting a contract to do a fee analysis, and that will certainly be helpful in order to charge it. But right now, as it stands, it's my understanding, and if I recall correctly, the CBA would need a statutory change. They would need authority to actually charge the actual 2.1% or whatever's being charged in order to cover those, to recoup those costs, if not done as part of the processing fee, if that makes sense. So sorry, Alicia?
Oh, no, go ahead.
If we raised our fees to $256 instead of $250, that would cover that.
In theory, I'm not the accountant, but yeah.
I didn't quite understand what your statement was saying. I mean, we've got a fee, and we obviously go through a process to establish the fee. Is what you're saying that if the convenience charge was passed along to the user, that would require regulatory approval?
Yes. Well, not regulatory, but statutory, yes. So there's two ways that you could recoup the fee. You could charge the convenience fee, you could pass it along, and I don't know, I don't want to speak to the other boards that are passing along the fee, because I don't know under what authority they're doing it. Maybe they have authority that I'm not aware of, but so you could either pass on the fee, which would require authority to do that, or it could be done as part of the fee analysis in determining how much it costs. So it's either you charge it as a convenience fee, or you say this is the cost of how much it costs us to do this.
So I'm probably not supportive of changing anything at this point, just because I think we got to get the critical mass on the population that's using this. But I would say that question should probably be vetted out a little bit more with maybe some written stuff anchored in whatever the real statutory guidance is, because that's inconsistent with my recollection of the conversations we had last time when we were first rolling this out.
Sure, I'll have something at the next meeting.
Yes.
Yeah, and that was my question too, is I would love to know what other boards, licensing boards, have either taken up the charge, or if they've passed it on to the user.
And I believe, and we looked into this, the other boards use the same vendor that we do, and one of the options when contracting with the vendor is you advise the vendor via the contract whether the board's going to pay the fee, and then if so, the transaction fee is on a sliding scale based on volume and the type of credit card that the individual uses, because there's a slight variance. If it has points, then the transaction fee is a bit higher. If through the vendor contract we go to the convenience fee model, then it's a set amount. Right now that the contracts that are in place, it's 2.9, I believe, is the fee. So it's a decision that's made during the contracting process.
And then one final question. So, and there's no way to negotiate this because it's all looped into one vendor, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
That's my understanding, is that we're under the DGS contract.
Got it.
And that we're required to use the DGS contract.
Okay. Any other?
Sorry, I had one final comment. The boards that are listed here as boards that are currently paying the fee for their members, I would like to know if they are considering this same argument, whether to pass on the fee to their members?
One of the boards has indicated that no, it has no plan to change, and the other board that passes it on, they will consider that just because of fiscal situations, but no decision has been made, but they will be looking at that in the future.
Thank you.
Yes.
I guess what I would clarify is I think I'm hearing different things. My question was more, can we consider the average overhead burden? Should it become necessary for us in our fee analysis versus saying, if you want to use a credit card, we're going to pass it along? I think those are two discrete things, maybe.
Right,
And
and
that's
that's
maybe
why-
why the recollection is different, because it would just be, what is our average cost? Our average cost is $256 on average. One might be $270, one might be $255. It's not a direct pass along. And maybe that's where I'm hearing the difference in our questions and what we've talked about in the past.
And
Well,
that's
we've
what I
got a whole
was,
series of questions, right?
No,
One
I
is the charge a statutory thing or not?
Right.
Two, is the quantum of the fee, but you can't just analyze the quantum of the fee by itself. Presumably, we're doing this from an efficiency standpoint, and there's an existing overhead burden we have on people processing these things, matching stuff up, reconciling accounts. That may or may not change, right? And so you supposedly there's a win-win here, I think, and that might be part of this fee analysis. So there's a whole bunch of variables, but I'm not hearing anybody suggesting we need to change anything now.
No.
Oh, yes, Mr. Jacobson.
So, and I would add to that, if we can get interest back, I also want to add that while attorneys are under a different section, our board is part of the judicial branch. My painful memory of what I think was the 1 year that I paid online with a credit card is that it was significantly higher than 2.9, something like 5 or 6, or I don't know. I'm still bleeding from it. So whatever it was.
Sounds like
Okay, if there's no further questions, we're going to head on to agenda item 4C, and we're going to hear about the California Board of Accountancy annual report, and I believe Mr. Bone is going to present on that.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before I jump in, I've got the next 3 items. I did want to share Ms. Bauer's request, a little staffing update on my end as well. I'm actually very fortunate today. My entire team is with me today. You all know Mr. Renovitz, who presented earlier today. I have a brand new member who just walked in, Mr. Wayne Wilson. He is our new special projects analyst, be handling a variety of tasks. We're very pleased to have him. And then we have another fantastic employee, but unfortunately she's departing our operations. That's Ms. Monique Langer in the back there. And she's been, for almost the past year, our information and planning analyst, handling all kinds of communications and outreach. And today she and Mr. Wilson are going to be managing our outreach event over at the Business Administration College today. And we wish her well. She's got a promotion over at the controller's office, so we're very happy for her, but sad for us. Moving on to 4C, which is the annual report. The purpose of this item, Mr. President, is to present our annual report. The report discusses the various accomplishments of the CBA during the prior fiscal year as we fulfill our mission to protect consumers. The report's made available to stakeholders and published on our website. To create this report, we partnered with the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy, who provided the graphic design work. I can say we're very, very pleased with how that turned out. The report is broken down into several sections. I'd like to just briefly highlight some of the items in there and note some of the upcoming issues. First, moving to our budget section on page 11, it notes our allocations by program area. To effectively monitor our spending this year, staff developed a new internal tracking system. This was necessary due to delays in an upcoming statewide budget and accounting software. This budget section also discusses the CBA's expenditures and the condition of our fund. Page 14 mentions the upcoming increases to our license renewal and initial licensure fees authorized by our Sunset Review Bill, AB 1521. Moving to page 15, under Outreach, Communication, and Education, we note our collaboration with NASBA on some of our outreach materials, and pages 16 through 18 discuss the events from the prior year that we participated in. On the horizon for this area, as noted on page 19, is the upcoming requirement for applicants and licensees to provide a valid email address to the CBA. This information will help expand our toolkit to communicate with those we regulate. The next section of the report covers our enforcement program. I won't get too far ahead of the enforcement chief, who will provide additional information during his report, but on page 21, we note that the enforcement program closed its highest volume of investigations in 3 years. Also, page 25 states that the CBA's investigation cycle time was 119 days, which is a significant drop from the 193-day timeframe from the prior year. Looking to the future, the enforcement program will collaborate with other agencies to investigate unlicensed activity. Next up is licensing, beginning on page 27. For most of the year, staff have been processing our applications at or below the 30-day target timeframe, and maintaining that target remains the primary focus of the licensing division. Page 31 is the beginning of the section on legislation and regulations. The section discusses the key bills we engaged on during the year, but by far our largest effort was related to our sunset review process and the related legislation, AB 1521. Next year, we look forward to continuing our productive conversations with the legislature on our revenue and reserve needs. Finally, members, is our technology section on pages 37 and 38. There, we discuss the successful launch of the credit card payment portal for license renewals. The CBA's business modernization project is underway, which will develop and deploy a new information technology system to reduce processing timeframes and improve the applicant, licensee, and staff experience. We anticipate full implementation of that project in 2022, but an early project also under development is to bring initial CPA license applications online, thereby streamlining that process. That concludes my remarks, Mr. President. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Is there any questions or comments?
I have a question. This is Luz Molina. Mr. Bone, on page 28 of your report, it's a beautiful report, by the way. I really like the way it looks. The chart for application type, I'm failing to understand why the numbers for approved are higher than for received. Does that make sense?
Some of the applications are, if you look at a fiscal year, they're received in the fiscal year, but they're not completed until the next fiscal year, so there'll always be that sort of
I see.
discrepancy between the numbers.
Got it. Okay, good. Got it. Thank you. I wonder if that could be clarified on here? Sure, we can add a footnote. Thank you.
Other questions or comments from the board? With that, well, I would like to add just thanking for all the great efforts for the executive officer and her team on the sunset review process. That was quite involved, and there was a lot of time that had to be focused on that, and it was certainly a learning process for myself. But I did want to acknowledge the efforts that went into that. It was a lot of work, and I think we did a really nice job in terms of relative in sitting with the Joint Assembly and Senate Committee on that. I think we fared a lot better than some of the other entities that were presenting there. So I think great job to the team. We can move on then to agenda item 4D and get an update on the activities to collect applicant and licensee email addresses. And Mr. Bone will continue with his presentation on that topic.
Thank you, Mr. President. In July 2018, the CBA directed staff to begin to move away from the hard copy printing and mailing of the update. At that time, the CBA was preparing its Sunset Review report, and to facilitate this transition, the CBA included in that report 2 related statutory requests. The first was to allow the CBA to meet its obligation to provide a report of its activities, which we do through the update, to licensees through an email distribution or by posting it on the website. The second was to require all applicants and licensees to provide a valid email address to the CBA. Both of these requests were included in Assembly Bill 1521, which we expect to be signed into law very soon. Pages 3 and 4 of the paper discuss the staff plan to collect email addresses and transition update readers to an electronic distribution. As previously directed by the CBA, staff are developing a system that would require readers to opt in if they wish to receive a hard copy of the update. To save time, we plan to manage the email collection and opt-in processes through the CBA's website. That concludes my remarks, Mr. President. I'm happy to answer questions.
Any questions from members of the board? Okay, without further questions, we will continue on to agenda item 4E and receive an update on the California Board of Accountancy's Communication and Outreach Program, and Mr. Bone will continue with his presentation.
Thank you, Mr. President. Today, we're very excited to host an outreach event co-sponsored by the Cal Poly Pomona College of Business Administration. Today, during the noon hour, Secretary Treasurer Corrigan and staff will speak at the Business College building and provide an overview of the requirements for licensure in California. Following that, from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m., the staff will meet with students from the college on a drop-in basis to get answers to their individual questions regarding their progress toward licensure. Since the prior CBA meeting, staff attended an event in Pasadena, which was a community resource fair and block party hosted by Assemblymember Christopher Holden. DCA and numerous other staff agencies were represented that day, and we look forward to being invited back to this annual event. On September 20th, Ms. Corrigan spoke to students at Chaffey College in Rancho Cucamonga. This event was hosted by Cal CPA as a part of their From Community College to CPA series. Staff also attended to provide our outreach materials and respond to attendee questions. Looking toward the fall, we have been invited to speak at 2 other upcoming Cal CPA events. The first at San Francisco State University on October 29th and American River College in Sacramento on December 6th. That concludes my remarks, Mr. President. I'm happy to answer questions.
Any questions from members of the board? Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Bone. I think we're going to head on to agenda item 5, and then we'll come back to agenda item 2 and hear the report of our vice president after we complete that. So with that, agenda item 5A, there is no report from the Enforcement Advisory Committee. So we're going to skip to the Peer Review Oversight Committee agenda item 5C, and we're going to hear from Mr. Kleiser, and he's going to present his report.
Good morning, thank you. I've got a couple items to present. First is a report on our August 16th meeting of the Peer Review Oversight Committee. We met in the CBA's offices in Sacramento, and I'd like to thank Ms. Salazar for attending that meeting and giving a presentation on the CBA's activities from their May and July 2019 meetings. The PROC members at that meeting reported on various oversight activities that had occurred since our previous meeting in May. We also discussed and provided feedback on a few different items throughout. One was our 2020 meeting dates, which is my next item to present on. The other is we went through and did a preliminary assessment of our oversight activity that we conduct annually at the California Society of CPAs. It's one of our more significant oversight activities of the committee, and we do an annual analysis of what we're going to do and how we're going to conduct that. We also began work on our 2019 PROC annual report and the peer-reviewer related statistics that will be included in that report. A couple of other key items that we discussed is the review on the progress and development of a peer reviewer population monitoring framework. And that'll be discussed in Dominic's next item. And then also, we reviewed the feedback received by the AICPA regarding the issues on non-conforming engagements identified by the AICPA's subject matter experts, as compared to peer reviewers' considerations of those and identification of those items in their peer reviews. Our next meeting will be December 13th, also held at the Sacramento offices. Are there any questions?
Okay.
I will move on. The next item is we're asking the CBA to adopt or modify our 2020 proposed meeting dates. There are 4 of them there listed in the materials: February 14th, May 8th, August 14th, and December 11th, 2020. I'll turn discussion back over.
Any further questions? Yes, Ms. Salazar.
I would just make a motion to adopt the proposed meeting dates.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay. There any other additional comments from the board members? Any comments from the public? I will now call for the vote.
Alicia Burhell?
Yes.
Jose Campos?
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
George Pamela?
Yes.
Mary Jian?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Katrina Salazar?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
And Mark Silverman?
Yes.
And the motion carries. Okay. We're moving on to item 5C3. Mr. Franzello will present.
Thank you. So this is discussion and possible action regarding the AICPA subject matter experts identifying a higher number of non-conforming peer review engagements than peer reviewers. So this agenda item provides information requested by the CBA related to the 2017 AICPA peer review program annual oversight report, which was issued by the AICPA back in October of 2018 and is attachment 1 to your materials. In 2018, the CBA's PROC reviewed the AICPA's AICPA's oversight report and determined that the report indicated that AICPA subject matter experts were identifying higher numbers of non-conforming engagements than peer reviewers, and there is a need to obtain clarity regarding the non-conforming engagements identified by the AICPA's subject matter experts and the peer reviewers. This information was included in PROC's 2018 annual report, which the CBA reviewed and accepted earlier this year at its March meeting. The CBA acknowledged the PROC's interest and requested the PROC follow up on this topic with the AICPA. So on May 30th, staff sent a letter to the AICPA, which is attachment 2 to your materials, and requested clarification regarding the number of non-conforming engagements identified in their annual oversight report. We received a response from Mr. Brackens from the AICPA on July 18th. It is attachment 3. And on page 3 of your item, we have highlighted the AICPA's responses to the various, or overviewed the AICPA's responses to those questions that we posed. The PROC did discuss this topic at its meeting and last August, as Mr. DeLizer had indicated, and at that time, the PRC acknowledged the struggles experienced by the AICPA related to the overall development of a consistent and comprehensive definition of non-conforming peer reviews, and believes that over time, this will become more consistent through continual annual oversight and probably developed during the RAB processes and other activities. There is no specific action required by the CBA. I'd like to turn discussion back on this topic back over to the President Pamela, and be happy to answer any questions. And Mr. Leiser is here also to answer any questions members may have.
Any questions?
Yeah, so there's lots of information in there, but I guess as you dissect through what you've seen so far, I was probably having a hard time figuring out what is the degree of variance, right? And the greater that degree of variance, then maybe the more it begs the question about our peer reviewers, right? Are they doing what they need to be doing, or do we have a quality control problem with our peer reviewers themselves? If failures are not being caught in their reviews, but they're being caught by independent, sample reviews. And what's your sense on that at this point? I mean, I agree with the concept of continuing to sort of check this out and see where it takes us.
So from my perspective, one of the challenges that is being experienced here is the subject matter expert, the SME in this particular case, is looking at an isolated audit report for non-conforming issues and what is being found in there compared to what the peer reviewer is looking at in terms of a totality of the system of quality control. And so a peer reviewer may find the report non-conforming, maybe even needed to indicate such, but it may not have a demonstrable impact on the system of quality control. That is what the peer reviewer is looking to assess, whereas the subject matter expert on his or her function is, this is non-conforming and should have been identified as such. So I think there is just that disconnect to some degree of what their ultimate goals are. And some of it is trying to be evolving in that particular issue. And then from my understanding in the RAB meetings, the report acceptance bodies meetings, there are these discussions of what is non-conforming, and there isn't a specific definition, and it is subjective in a lot of ways, because there's not, if this, and this aren't done, then it's non-conforming. One RAB member may think it's non-conforming, another may think it's not, and it has to be hashed out to a degree. So I think the lack of something objective creates this problem, and over time, hopefully, it starts to work itself out.
The AICPA has made efforts to try to create some sort of objectivity. They've modified the checklist that peer reviewers are using to where they've bolded key issues to kind of, they don't want to remove judgment from the process because that invalidates a lot of it. But they want to guide that judgment to some extent so that two sets of independent people can arrive at similar conclusions on an engagement. So they've bolded certain questions that they say these really ought to be judgment drivers, so that people are using kind of the same criteria.
Yes.
Hopefully, we'll see the effects of that in the future.
So I think I get the non-conforming conclusion piece, but you said something that caught my attention. I just want to make sure I understood it right. A peer reviewer goes in and looks not only at the report, but the body of work for selected areas that support that report. Are you saying that the top level, I don't know, this other sample basis of review, did that include the same documentation, or was it only the report itself that was being reviewed?
It's the same documentation, but it's engagement specific, where a peer reviewer is looking at a totality, a system of quality control at a firm. They're going to look at several engagements, a variety of types and partners, where the subject matter experts from the AICPA have honed in on a single engagement that was part of the review. And so they're seeing the exact same documents from the firm that the peer reviewer saw, but they're laser focused on a single engagement.
And so that peer reviewer may have come to similar conclusions with respect to that one engagement, but looked at 5, 6, 10 other ones in the process and come to a...
And in their judgment, the significance of that finding may not have been the same as what that expert did.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Further questions? Okay, we're going to move on to item C4, 5C4, and Mr. Franzella will update us on the peer review for population.
All right, so thank you. This is updates regarding the peer reviewer population. This item provides information on implementation and monitoring framework for the California peer reviewer population. It is requested that the CBA approve the data collecting and monitoring framework and begin having the PROC report the information in the PROC's 2020 annual report. So as members will recall, this topic stretches back, I want to say, into the middle of 2017, so it's been ongoing for some time. And back in 2017, the CBA and PROC expressed some concern regarding the possible decrease in the California peer reviewer population, and then that potential barrier for licensees to find peer reviewers to complete the required peer review, so the overall impact it would have on renewing a license. So since mid-2017, the CBA and PROC have sent multiple communications to the AICPA inquiring the statistics it maintained related to the population. But earlier this year, the CBA approved a letter that changed kind of the nature of the CBA's request. Rather than working through the possible statistics the AICPA may have, the CBA proposed a monitoring framework that included both data collection and narrative kind of analysis specific to California peer reviewer population, enrollment in the peer review program, and the peer reviews completed for California licensed accounting firms. And that letter is found in attachment 1 to your materials. The AICPA response to that letter is attachment 2. And at its recent August meeting, the PRC reviewed attachment 2 and the AICPA's response and determined to be sufficient to initiate their peer review, monitoring of the peer reviewer population and reporting framework. One thing I would like to note that at this stage, any information we receive under this kind of framework that was developed in the CBA's letter, which is attachment 1, is mostly informational, and the CBA will be able to evaluate trends in the years to come. The reason why is the first set of peer reviewer population statistics will be useful really in a 3-year phase, as that's how peer review kind of looks. So the population that it's affecting won't really be noticed until 3 years plus 1, so current year plus 3 years, to have like a comparative analysis to see what impact is happening with that group. But we will be able to kind of evaluate some just general trends from year to year and see kind of what's going on. Staff will work with the AICPA with the guidance of the PROC and incorporate the peer reviewer population statistics in the 2020 annual report. And so staff is requesting that CBA approve the data collecting and monitoring framework and to begin to have the PROC report the information in the PROC's 2020 annual report. And so for members, for members to understand the framework, it's really all the information that was provided in attachment 1 into our original letter, except those items that the AICPA responded that they do not presently collect, or statistics that they are in the process of probably doing additional surveys on. So with that, I turn it back over to the members, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Questions from board members? Yes.
Point of clarification, this is Luz Molina. All of the data collection would come from AICPA?
Yes.
And I have another follow-up question. Not really follow-up, it's a different sort of vein. So there is a concern that the California peer review population is possibly decreasing. Do other states have this problem as well? Do we know?
I don't know specific. I can speak more just anecdotal, and it's my understanding that is the case. It's become more of a, since we've been pushing the narrative for a while now, since 2017, I know it's been taken up at both NASBA as well as various AICPA peer review, their peer review board meetings. And so it's on everybody's radars. I think also one of the things that's contributing to this, maybe less so in California, but maybe in other states, is this AICPA is going through a level of contraction with state organizations or the societies who generally oversee the peer review program for the AICPA under this new benchmark model. And so we're hearing anecdotal things, but there's not a whole lot of information out there. I think California is kind of on the forefront in trying to pull information from the AICPA, getting the AICPA to be a little bit more transparent with some of the information. But I do believe it is a national issue because peer review can be done by peer reviewers in any state can do a California peer review. So I think it is something that we're hearing kind of on a national level.
Thank you.
Okay. Would any member like to make a motion?
I had a question on what's NPRC.
The National Peer Review Committee, firms that go, the big firms, the PR, who are subject to PCOB inspection generally go through the NPRC.
No. We need a motion? What's,
You can use the motion on page 3.
can.
Or just move to adopt staff's recommendation on page 3.
Can we just make a motion to approve the data collecting and monitoring framework specified on California peer reviewer population and begin reporting information in the annual report for prompt?
Do we have a second?
Second.
Was that a motion?
Are there any
Katrina?
additional
That was
comments?
the most weirdly worded motion I've ever heard.
Well, speak up, Mr. Campbell.
Any additional comments from board members? Any comments from the public? I will now call for the vote.
Okay, Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
George Familet,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
and Alicia Burhow.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Franzella. Thank you, Mr. DeLizer. We're going to skip back on our agenda, and we are going to head back to item 2, and we are going to hear the report of the Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. First item is to recommend the following reappointment of Michael Johnson, CPA, and Jim Sanji, CPA, to the Enforcement Advisory Committee. The EAC assists the CBA in an advisory capacity with enforcement activities. This includes reviewing closed investigation files, providing technical guidance on open investigations, and participating in investigative hearings. I've conferred with CBA Executive Officer to verify that the individuals have met the appropriate requirements for license renewal and have demonstrated the skills and knowledge to continue serving on the EAC. Therefore, I recommend that Michael Johnson, CPA, and Jim Sanji, CPA, be reappointed as members of the Enforcement Advisory Committee effective October 1, 2019 through September 30th, 2021, unless any member would like to take each reappointment individually.
Any questions or comments? Okay.
Do I move the slate? I can move the slate? All right. Make a motion to move the slate.
I second that.
Okay, any other comments? Okay, have a vote.
Alicia Burhow,
Yes.
Jose Campos.
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
George Familet.
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
and Mark Silverman.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. The next item is to recommend the reappointment of Brad Holsworth, CPA, and Michael L. Williams, CPA, to the Qualifications Committee. The QC assists the CBA in its licensure activities by reviewing the experience of applicants for licensure and making recommendations to the CBA. This includes conducting work paper reviews with the applicant or the employer present to verify that the responses provided are reflective of the requisite experience for licensure. I've conferred with the CBA Executive Officer to verify that each individual has met the appropriate requirements for license renewal and have demonstrated the skills and knowledge to continue serving as a member of the Qualifications Committee. Therefore, I recommend that Brad Holsworth, CPA, and Michael L. Williams, CPA, be reappointed to the Qualifications Committee effective October 1, 2019 through September 30th, 2021, unless any member would like to take each reappointment individually. President Famlock, would you like to make a motion? Or to ask?
Yes, do we have any comments or questions from the board?
I move approval of both.
And I second it.
Okay. Have a vote?
Okay, Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Michael Savoy.
Yes.
Katrina Salazar. Luz Molina Lopez.
Yes.
Dan Jacobson.
Yes.
Mary Jiang.
Yes.
George Family.
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan.
Yes.
Jose Campos.
Yes.
And Alicia Burhow.
Yes.
Fell asleep there.
That's all I have, Mr. President.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Vice President. We're going to move ahead to agenda item 6, and we are going to hear the report of the enforcement chief, Mr. Franzella, making good progress today.
Thank you. So, agenda item 6A is the enforcement activity report, and so it represents the full fiscal year for 2018-19. So beginning with the complaints received, for fiscal year 2018-19, we received just over 3,000 complaints, and this represents about a 26% increase compared to the prior fiscal year. Looking to investigations and investigations pending, which is on pages 3 through 5 of your materials. The CBA ended 2018-19 with a significant reduction in the average days to close compared to the prior year, about a 35% reduction during that period. The Enforcement Division also closed over 600 more cases than were assigned for investigation. And of the nearly 3,700 cases closed, over 80% were closed within the first 6 months, and over 90% were closed within the first year. Moving on to page 4, which is the investigations pending. The enforcement team ended the fiscal year with 550 cases. This is over a 50% reduction in the pending inventory when compared to the last fiscal year. Additionally, the enforcement team continued to work to close cases over 24 months. We ended the fiscal year with 13 cases over 24 months, which was down from 47 in the prior year. And if you look back into 2016-17, that number was 114. So we've obviously made a significant impact in that particular area. Moving on to discipline and discipline-related information. The CBA referred 74 matters to the AG's office last year, with 75 pleadings filed, and the vast majority of those were accusations. We ended the year with 69 matters pending at the AG's office, with 3 cases being over 24 months. Obviously, one of them has been on there for quite some time, and more discussion will happen later today on that particular matter, as well as the other 2. One is an investigative stage we were working with the AG's office on, and the other has a hearing set for early next year. Moving over to discipline and final orders, the CBA took action on 75 matters last fiscal year. This is down from prior fiscal years. The enforcement team was working actively to eliminate a backlog, as we kind of showed from the prior years, of older cases and manage that case inventory, and that resulted in a high volume of referrals to the AG's office in the fiscal years kind of predating those found on this report. So, for example, the AG referrals was 97 in 2014-15 and 105 in 15-16, and because of these higher referral rates, we had a number of matters that came forward to the board for discipline. So we had a higher than large volume during about a 3-year period. And so this 75 is kind of now taking into consideration all the older cases that were kind of cleared in the prior years. Moving on to citation and fine, the fiscal year ended with 517 citations being issued. This has been, again, a trend I've been reporting on over the past few reports. The total when compared to the last fiscal year is about 3-fold higher. And the significant driver and contributor to this is the increase in the minimum yearly CE requirement, the number of citations we're issuing for that, commonly known as the 20 and 12, which account for over 70% of the citations we're issuing. Moving on to unlicensed activity. This is a newly added section, and so it doesn't have any trend information for the board to kind of look at, so it's isolated to just this fiscal year. And during 18-19, we received 363 complaint types of unlicensed activity. We have 119 investigations pending, which is about a 22% decrease from the last report. We've issued 38 citations, closed the vast majority, over 400 matters for compliance, and we've referred 5 matters to the district attorney or local law enforcement. And again, they're starting next year, or when we come back in November, we'll start having some comparative information, so for trend analysis going forward in unlicensed activity. Lastly, on probation monitoring, the final area I'd like to report, we presently have 161 individuals on probation, and we have 1 probation orientation that we need to complete. We also have noted 70 probation violations, with the vast majority being reimbursement and submitting quarterly reports. So with that, this concludes my report, and I'd like to turn discussion back over to President Pamela, and I'm happy to answer members' questions.
Any questions from board members?
I have a question.
Yes.
Mary Jiang. Dominic, on the second to the last 2 pages on the unlicensed activity page, I'm trying to understand, what is this practice without a permit? I understand individual without a CPA license, but what is the permit that they need?
That's classified for, generally we look at that as being individuals who are actually CPAs, and their license is either delinquent or they're in inactive stage, so that they're not actually practicing and authorized to practice with their permit, as opposed to individuals without a CPA license who are like myself, who would be out there practicing. And so we wanted to distinguish between those who we have more jurisdiction over, would be the practice without a permit, and those who are the individual license, or who are non-licensees of the board, who we work to get compliance on their kind of marketing materials and information they have.
Okay, so the permit, someone who's been a CPA, was in good standing and didn't renew his license.
They could have renewed, they could be inactive, which is a current status, it just happens to be one you can't practice with, so.
Okay, I think there was another question over here.
Yes, also on the unlicensed activity, I was curious on the bottom, the outcomes, closed for compliance. That's the vast majority of these. Can you expand on that?
Sure. Closed for compliance so compliance is the general kind of function we try to do with unlicensed practice. Most of them, as you can see, we have people who, unregistered firms, a lot of individuals who are sole proprietors. They may have started a corporation but failed to register it with the board, so we get them to comply with the registration requirements. They could be individuals who are marketing as doing accounting level work, but it might not require a license. So we work to make sure they're in compliance with their advertising materials, and certain individuals who are, as I was mentioning to Ms. Young, the people who aren't renewed might be delinquent or might be inactive and are practicing. We work to get compliance with them. So then we just get the documentation, ensure they're in compliance, and then we close the matter. It's only when we are unable to kind of get that we end up in a citation environment generally, or if it's an unlicensed individual, an actually unlicensed individual, then we might refer them to local law enforcement.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah, couple things, Dominic. First on the, which page was this? The discipline final orders. I think we got a little typo on the proposed decisions in the middle column there.
We did. I forgot to mention that.
Just for future ones, yeah. I mean,
it's 6, not 60.
I'm like, I don't remember seeing 60 proposed decisions in that year. But going back to paid investigations pending, I mean, page 4, and you highlighted that over 24 months, but I mean, when you look at the current period and you look at over 12 months, stuff that's just aged greater than a year, I mean, you're looking at about 40 items. And if we go back 2 years prior, I mean, that was close to 300 investigations that were sitting there. I know we've been working hard at monitoring that over 2-year piece, but kept having stuff, flow up to there. And so right now, it just feels like that docket's in good shape. So, I mean, we've been saying it now for many meetings, but, great job on that process. I think the annual report gives due, consideration to that. We've got to keep our foot on the accelerator and just keep that in a manageable spot. But, I mean, that is incredible news. And then the last thing I had was on the summary of complaint types on page 2, I guess, and the little sliver of red is these DOL, employee benefit items. And some time ago, we had quite a flurry of DOL type referrals and probably negative comments coming out of the DOL right on that. What's your sense on where we are with those kinds of complaints?
Honestly, I never saw, so even taking us back to that point in time, we didn't get a high volume of referrals, which was kind of the impetus for a lot of the dialogue that came out of the Department of Labor's concern that boards weren't acting when these were found. And so they set up a portal for us to receive these complaints in a more expeditious manner. And since that time, I still haven't seen this large volume of particular complaints. Obviously, we've seen 14 during the fiscal year, which is
more than the other.
Which is more than the other years, but not when you compare it to the overall scope of our complaint. Not significant. Less than it doesn't get to 1%. So I don't really have a lot of information that's coming out of their office anymore, other than they get notification, we got access into their portal, we downloaded the complaint, and then we follow up with them later if we do anything with it, but it's never really manifested into this flood of complaints coming into our office.
All right, that's helpful.
I had a quick question on the second page in that same, and you may have said this, but I might have missed it, but I noticed the renewal deficiency sort of been creeping up in the gray. What was the explanation for that?
I would say if we're ever looking at renewal deficiency, the primary driver is going to be CE, and then of that subset, the significant driver is going to be the annual 20 and 12 individuals doing their minimum yearly CE. At this point, I believe the board has done its due diligence to inform individuals. We've sent letters to providers. We've done a lot of things to try to deal with this issue. We've even started dealing with higher citation amounts to, at least on the second kind of go-round. But I don't have I can't offer any kind of solution right now to how to manage that particular, but that it tends to be what it is.
Yeah, I mean, the one thought I had in that area is maybe in our electronic newsletter or something, maybe create some kind of graphic or did you know, or something there that sort of just highlights that that's sort of where people run into some issues, just to sort of be proactive about trying to get that in front of them. Because I think people peruse those quickly, and so if you give them a little graphic or something, that may be helpful to sort of, at least remind folks out there that they should check that, and the time of year that they should probably check that, or put a reminder.
One of the other things also, when we move to our business modernization project and we replace our existing systems, we're hopeful that that system will have the ability to actually notify individuals as they're approaching the first year, reminding them that, hey, you only have 2 months left to satisfy the 2012 requirement, and then, hey, you only have 30 days left. And so if we can do that electronically, then I think that will allow us to significantly reduce those violations as well.
Yeah, no, something like that, or just automatically send an email 2 months before, hey, did you check where you're at on this? And we'll have emails then, and people tend to be a lot more responsive to things of that nature than sort of trying to remind themselves.
Or they would delete the emails.
Filter them in.
Exactly. So further comments, Mr. Ronzella? Okay, well, we're going to head on then to item 7, and we're going to hear the report of the licensing chief, Mr. Ronzella, currently. Wears a lot of hats.
Thank you. These remarks will be much briefer. So again, this is the licensing activity report. It's for the full fiscal year 2018-19. I'll just highlight a handful of items. The examination initial licensing unit are processing apps within 30 days. Those units did experience increases across the division related to applications that were approved for both examination and licensure, as was noted earlier in the annual report. The renewal unit processed over 48,000 license renewals, which is just over 3,000 more than it did the prior year. And last, the attached to the activity report is NASBA's CPA examination performance summary, which is a two-part report with one related to California specific and the other related to all jurisdictions. With that, I turn it back over to President Famelot, and I'll do my best to answer any questions you may have on the licensing section.
Any comments or questions from board members?
Yeah, on page 3.
No, I'll take copious notes and get the information.
My best.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, well, if there's no further questions then, we're going to move on to other business, and we're going to hear a report from Ms. Salazar.
Thank you very much. For the State Board Committee, which is the AICPA, I will give my next report at the next meeting. There is a scheduled meeting the first week of October, so look forward to bringing that report back. If the President would indulge me, I'd like to just cover mine and then turn it back for B2 for Rebecca. Is that okay?
Sure.
Okay, great. So for the NASBA, which is the National Association of State Boards of Accountancy Pacific Regional Director Report, the primary activity was our region, which is the Pacific region, had its conference call, so I'd like to thank those folks that participated in it. We had our regional call and had very good participation. I believe the only state that was not represented was Hawaii, and that is an opportunity for the leadership in each jurisdiction within our region to dialogue together, get updates from NASBA, and also talk about issues and things that are happening locally within their area. A lot of the highlights had to do with legislation and wrapping up the legislative sessions in various states. Moving on to the NASBA report, I did, as a board member, attend the July board meeting. Some of the issues continuing discussion there were staff augmentation, which this board discussed at the July meeting. The slate of officers was approved and by the board, by the NASBA board, and will be a vote item at the annual meeting in October for that organization. Also, the bylaws revisions were approved by the NASBA board and will also be presented at the NASBA annual conference for a vote. So I understand we do have a CBA representative who will be there to participate in that. Other than that, that concludes my report. So thank you.
Okay, well, thank you. Any questions or comments by board members? Okay, I guess we're going to move on to... Okay, so we're going to move on to 9B2, and we're going to have a discussion and approval of staff resources.
I just wanted to point out real quick that in members' hand carry folder, they did receive a revised attachment of the NASBA focus question responses with a little bit additional information. But the purpose of this agenda item is to provide the CBA with staff proposed responses to the NASBA focus questions. The responses assist the NASBA regional directors with staying apprised of each state's policies, procedures, and recent activities. The CBA may make a motion to approve the attached focus questions or direct staff to make any changes prior to submitting the responses to NASBA. And at this time, I would like to turn it back over to President Familette, and would be happy to answer any questions.
Any comments or questions from the board?
I do have a comment on page 2 of the focus questions. I believe there is a note down at the bottom that the position on the bill in the September meeting, it will be reflected here. I do want to point out that we did change, right? We did change the, did we change it? Presently, it's watch, and I think we made a, to update that to
51.
Could you clarify which item you're speaking about,
Yes,
Ms.
so I'm
Williams?
on
Thank
the
you.
focus questions on page 2 of the NASBA report. On the bottom, it says AB 1525, if the CBA takes a position on the September meeting, which is now, that will be reflected in this response. And I just want to point out that, yes, this does need to be updated.
Yes, we will after the meeting.
Thank you.
Any further questions? Would a member would like to make a motion?
You need a motion first? I move approval of the focus question responses as written with the pending edit that was just discussed.
Second.
Okay. Are there any additional comments from the board members? Any comments from the public? I'll now call for a vote.
Okay, Alicia Verhow,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
George Familette,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
and Mark Silverman.
Yes.
All right.
Motion passes. Thank you. Okay, so we're going to move up to agenda item 8, meeting minutes. And so that will be approving the meeting minutes. And so can I get a motion to adopt the minutes of the July 25th, 2019 California Board of Accountancy meeting, specifically agenda item 8A?
So moved.
Seconded.
Okay. Are there additional comments from board members? Okay. Any comments from the public?
A question?
Sure.
So my question is looking at I attended by teleconference, and in the committee minutes, I believe that's noted on my attendance by teleconference, and I don't believe I see that in here. Does that need to be mentioned, the method in which I participated?
I think it should clarify.
And then maybe that would be my request, is that we accept a friendly amendment to clarify the teleconference attendance.
I'll think about it. Okay. I accept Ms. Salazar's friendly amendments.
Any further comments from the public? I'll now call for a vote.
Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Abstain?
George Familette,
Abstain.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
and Alicia Verhow.
Yes.
Motion passes. Okay. Now, can I get a motion to accept the minutes, specifically agenda items 8B through D?
I move approval of the minutes as written on 8A, 8B, C, and D.
Second.
Okay. Any further comments from the board members?
Sorry, is this also for the 25th of July or May 3rd?
Depends on the
It's
meeting.
it's all of them. Thank you.
Any other comments from the board members? Comments from the public? I'll now call for a vote.
All right, Alicia Verhow,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
George Familette,
Abstain.
Mary Jiang,
Abstain?
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
and Mark Silverman.
Yes.
Right?
Okay, motion carries. Yeah. So I think we are at a stopping point. We have gone as far as we can go until after lunch, which we will return from time certain at 1:30. 1. I stand corrected. Time certain, 1 o'clock. With that, unless there's any comments, I will adjourn until 1 o'clock. Thank you. Let's call to order and do a roll call to establish a quorum. Starting down on my right.
Michael Savoy.
Jose Campos?
Luz Molina Lopez.
Mark Silverman.
George Familette.
Nancy Corrigan.
Mary Jiang.
Katrina Salazar.
Dan Jacobson.
Alicia Burha.
Okay, we have a quorum. We are going to go into closed session for approximately 1 hour, and we have a time certain back at 2 o'clock where we will be talking about the regulatory matter. And so with that, I will take us out of public session and bring us into closed session. Thank you. California Board of Accountancy, let's do a roll call to establish a quorum, starting on my right.
Michael Savoy.
Jose Campos?
Luz Molina Lopez.
George Familette.
Mark Silverman.
Nancy Corrigan.
Mary Jiang.
Katrina Salazar.
Dan Jacobson.
Okay, we have a quorum established. So we are going to go to agenda item 11, regulations. And Mr. Franzella is going to start out with item 11A, regulation hearing regarding Title 16 California Code of Regulations, Section 45, reporting to the board. Mr.
Thank you,
Franzella.
and I'm actually going to turn it over to Ms. Butu to do this is for the hearing itself.
Good afternoon. Hang on a second, not close enough. Good afternoon. This is a public hearing on proposed regulations of the California Board of Accountancy, Department of Consumer Affairs, to consider amending CBA regulation section 45 regarding peer review reporting. On behalf of the CBA and its staff, I'd like to welcome you. My name is Ileana Butu, and I serve as the board's legal counsel and will preside over this hearing on behalf of the CBA. The CBA welcomes all comments regarding its proposed amendments to Section 45 regarding peer review reporting. Please keep in mind that this hearing is intended to allow the CBA to receive comments from interested parties on the proposed regulation amendments. It is not intended for a debate or to provide a defense to the proposed amendments. If you have a question about a proposed regulation, instead of phrasing your comment as a question, please phrase it as a comment. For example, instead of asking what a particular subdivision means, please state that the language is unclear and why you believe it is unclear. This will allow the CBA to appropriately respond to the comments it receives. The CBA is contemplating this action pursuant to authority vested by Sections 5010 and 5076 of the Business and Professions Code, which authorize the CBA to amend, adopt, or repeal regulations for the administration and enforcement of Chapter 1 of Division 3 of the Business and Professions Code. For the record, today's date is September 26, 2019, and the time is approximately 2 p.m. This hearing is being held at the California State Polytechnic University, Kellogg West Conference Center and Hotel, 3801 West Temple Avenue, Pomona, California, 91768. The notice for the hearing on these proposed regulations was published by the Office of Administrative Law on July 12, 2019, to interested parties on our mailing list, and they have been notified of today's hearing. The language of the proposed regulations has been mailed to those who requested it and has been available on the CBA's website and upon request by other members of the public since July 11, 2019. Copies of the proposed regulation amendments are available here today. If the CBA has received written comments on the proposal, those comments will be entered into the official record of the proceedings. The CBA shall be provided and shall consider all written comments received through August 26, 2019. If you have a comment about the proposed regulation or any part or specific subsection of the proposal, please step up to the microphone and give your name, but you are not required to identify yourself. Individuals will be called to testify in the order determined by recognition from the hearing officer, me. If you choose to identify yourself, please spell your last name and tell us what organization you represent, if any. Speak loudly enough for your comments to be heard and recorded. Remember, it's not necessary to repeat the testimony of previous commentators. It is sufficient if you simply say that you agree with what a previous speaker has stated. Written testimony can be summarized and should not be read verbatim. When you are testifying, please identify the particular regulation proposal you are addressing. Please comment only on provisions of the article under discussion. Please keep in mind that this is a public forum to receive comments on the proposed regulations from interested parties and not a discussion. After all witnesses have testified, the testimony phase of the hearing will be closed. We may begin, I suppose. Are there any comments? Okay, seeing none, I guess we're closed. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to move on then to item 11B, discussion and possible action to amend Title 16 California Code of Regulations, Section 45, reporting to the board.
Thank you. So now that the hearing is closed, this item has provided the CBA an opportunity to consider any comments and provide any response, and an opportunity to adopt proposed changes to the CBA regulations, Section 45. The CBA will be asked to adopt proposed changes to CBA regulations, Section 45. So the Administrative Procedure Act requires that the public have a meaningful opportunity to participate in an agency's rulemaking activities. All agencies are required to provide for a 45-day public comment period that commences with the notice of the proposed action being published in the Office of Administrative Laws, the California Regulatory Notice Register. And during this period, members of the public may submit written comments to the CBA for its consideration. Additionally, when an agency holds a public hearing, it provides an opportunity to receive the comments from the public both orally and in writing. And once the 45-day public comment period concludes and the agency has held its public hearing, it must take steps to answer any public comment by accepting or rejecting the comment and providing any specific rationale for the decision. So during the 45-day public comment period, the CBA didn't receive any public comments or any written public comments. And at the conclusion of our regulatory hearing just a moment ago, we received no comments, so there's no public comment to respond to as part of this rulemaking package. Otherwise, had there been comment, we would have needed to accept or reject, provide information, and then include it in what's called the final statement of reasons. And then if the board accepted certain comments, we might have to modify the text and then issue another public, an opportunity to comment on that regulatory text under a 15-day public comment period. So moving to the actual kind of the more substantive part of this item, beginning on page 3 of your materials, staff have highlighted two options for the CBA related to this item. Option 1 relates to no additional changes being made to the regulatory text. And the second relates to, option 2 relates to substantive changes made in the regulatory text, and then have a public comment, a public comment period after adopting any modified text. So on the bottom of page 3 and continuing on to the top of page 5, staff are requesting the CBA consider some additional changes to the originally approved and noticed regulatory text. The text itself is both a small change within, and it's in the attachment. It's the form by incorporation is what's being modified. And the changes are noted in double strike through and double underline. I apologize, it's not the easiest way to kind of see some of these. However, this is how OAL requires that the process take place. And on pages 3 through 5, for each of the changes, staff have highlighted each change, provided rationale for the change. And again, primarily the overall rationale for all of the changes being presented is to increase clarity and basically usability of the form. So staff would recommend the CBA adopt the motion identified in option 2, which is also included in the staff recommendation outlined on page 5. At this point, I'll turn discussion back over to President Famelot, and I'll do my best to answer any members' questions.
Okay, questions from board members? Mr. Franzone?
I had one question for you on the attachment, the reporting form. And I guess would be new question number 4, where we ask, and 5, where we ask for license number and license expiration date. In both cases, we're referring to the firm license number and firm license date, right? Not the licensee whose name got put in there. And so the only thought I had was, should we say that on there, say firm license number and firm license expiration date? I don't know if that's differentiated in your record keeping from a licensee, just an individual license.
So the one, I think the reason why we haven't done that is because if it's a sole proprietor, it is their license number.
It is the license.
There's no separate firm number for that individual. So they are operating as Jose Campos CPA, and that would be the accounting firm name for purposes of this, but the license number under which that's being operated is Mr. Campos's license number, so it needs to be license number as it pertains to that accounting firm, which could be the individual's license number. I hope that...
Yeah, you clarified it. I know we added these little parenthetic phrases under each of the other ones, and I don't know if you need something similar on that one. I think it's pretty dummy-proof now. I mean, but
I'm hopeful that question 1 with the parenthetical that we've included there, if operated as a sole proprietor, not registered as a corporation, complete using your individual license information would assist.
Well, and on this version, you've stricken out the licensee name. Now.
Correct.
So you're not asking. Okay, I think that's what was originally drawing my reason for the question. Okay, I withdraw that.
Additional questions?
I would move to, what page are we on? Page 3 or where is that?
Page 5 is what you can just say staff's recommendation.
Yeah, I would move to adopt staff's recommendation at, what is it, number 2? Option 2?
Option 2.
I lost my spot.
Option 2.
Option 2, as listed on page 5 of the memorandum.
Yes, okay, thank you.
Second?
I second that.
Other comments? Comments from the public? All right, let's call for a vote.
Alicia Burhell? Jose Campos?
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan?
Yes.
George Famila?
Yes.
Mary Jiang?
Yes.
Dan Jacobson?
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez?
Yes.
Katrina Salazar?
Yes.
Michael Savoy?
Yes.
And Mark Silverman?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Okay, so next on the agenda, do you want to go back to the page or do you want to go on to the minutes? so we're going to move to agenda item 12, closing business, and seek public comments. Okay. Item 12B, agenda items for future California Board of Accountancy meetings. Okay. Being none, we are complete. Nope. Okay.
We're doing it.
Okay, now we're going to, as bear with us, we're planning on the fly, as they say. So, agenda item 10, report on Committee on Professional Conduct and Legislative Committee. And Mr. Jacobson, I believe, is going to provide that.
Thank you very much. Excuse my, I'm only 14, so my voice went up. Okay. Anyways, the Committee on Professional Conduct met. We first approved our minutes from our previous meeting. We went on to item 2. I reported that I had consulted with counsel in the first 2 pages about the template that in our memorandum. We were only to discuss that template as it relates to the more substantive action. And it was a discussion, the substantive action was a discussion and possible action to initiate a rulemaking to amend Title 16 California Code of Regulations at Section 2.8 and the definition of satisfactory evidence. Staff reported that the purpose of the item was to provide the board the opportunity to consider and approve updating the definition for satisfactory evidence as it relates to meeting the educational requirement for applicants applying for admission to the uniform CPA examination and CPA licensure. The offered proposal was designed to streamline how CPA may receive certified transcripts, including the ability to receive certified transcripts via a secured electronic method directly from the educational institution. The committee members offered some additional clarifying remarks to add to various sections of the initial statement of reasons, which staff noted it will incorporate into the materials. The committee recommends that the board approve the amended regulatory text in 16 CCR 2.8 and direct staff to submit the text to the Director of the Department of Consumer Affairs and Consumer Services and Housing Agency for review, and if no adverse comments are received, authorize the executive officer to take all steps necessary to initiate the rulemaking process, make any non-substantive changes to the package, and set the matter for a hearing. And this is a fully formed motion.
Okay. Any comments? Just vote. Yeah. Any other comments? Okay, let's have a vote.
Okay, Mark Silverman,
Yes.
Michael Savoy, Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
George Family,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
and Alicia Verhel.
Okay. Passes, motion passes. So, okay.
If I may then continue, Mr. President, we went on to our third agenda item, pending statutory changes effective January 1st of 2020 to Business and Professions Code sections 5070.1, 5070.2, 5070.5, 5096, and 5096.12. And it was discussion and possible action to make non-substantive or Section 100 changes to the forms incorporated by reference in Title 16 California Code of Regulations, Sections 15.1, 16, 19, and 20, to require the collection of electronic mail addresses or email addresses. Staff stated that the purpose of the item was to provide the board an opportunity to consider and approve amending certain board regulations and corresponding forms incorporated by reference to require applicants and licensees to provide an email address to the board. This requirement is included in AB 1221, which is the board's sunset bill. So the committee recommends that the board approve the regulatory text and forms incorporated by reference in the board's sections 15 regulations, sections 15.1, 15.1, 16, 19, and 20, and authorize the executive officer to initiate the formal rulemaking process for a Section 100 change, including submitting the text and form changes to the Office of Administrative Law. And this is a fully formed motion.
Any comments or questions from other board members? Yes.
Just something minor. Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. I believe you referred to our sunset bill as 1221. It's actually AB 1521.
Thank you very much, and I accept that correction. Thank you.
Okay. Other comments or questions from board members? Okay,
All right.
let's have a vote.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
George Familet,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
and Mark Silverman.
Yes.
Okay. Passes.
That concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jacobson. Next up on the agenda, we have item 10B, the Legislative Committee report. Ms. Lopez is going to provide that report.
Thank you, Mr. President. The LC committee met this morning at the start of the day. We covered several items, which I'm going to summarize here. Item 10B2, CBA 2019 Legislative Tracking Chart. This was a written report, but staff noted that AB 476 and AB 1181 were enrolled and awaiting action by the governor. Item 3 is an update, discussion, and possible action on legislation that the CBA has taken a position to assist the LC efficiently complete its business. Staff did not make a recommendation on items 3G through 3S, which have not been amended since the prior CBA meeting. These include, I'll read the numbers of the bills quickly. Assembly Bills 63, 193, 312, 535, 544, 613, 802, 1140, 1271, 1343, and 1545, as well as Senate Bill 53 and 601. The LC, again, did not take action on these items because they have not been amended since our last meeting. For item 3A, we did discuss Assembly Bill 476. This is Department of Consumer Affairs Task Force foreign-trained professionals. Staff stated that the bill would require the Department of Consumer Affairs to create a task force to study and issue a report regarding the licensing of professionals trained outside of the U.S. by July 1, 2022. Staff recommended the CBA maintain its watch position on AB 476 and stated that the bill was approved by the legislature and is awaiting action by the governor. The LC did not take action on this item. Item 3B, Assembly Bill 1076, Criminal Records Automatic Relief. Our discussion included staff's stating that the bill would establish a new administrative process operated by the Department of Justice that would grant arrest and criminal conviction record relief to eligible individuals. Recent amendments narrowed the scope of the bill that do not address the CBA's concerns regarding non-active licensees who have not submitted to a criminal background check. Staff recommended the CBA maintain its opposed unless amended position, stated that the bill was approved by the legislature and is awaiting action by the governor. Further, staff submitted a letter to the governor requesting a veto. The LC did not take an action on this item. The next item, 10B3C, regarding Assembly Bill 1181, charitable organizations. Staff stated that the bill requires the financial records relating to certain solicitations for charitable purposes be maintained according to accounting standards apart from generally accepted accounting principles. Recent amendments narrowed the scope of the bill but did not address the CBA's fundamental concerns. Staff recommended the CBA maintain its opposed position. Also, staff indicated that the bill was approved by the legislature and is awaiting action by the governor. Further, staff submitted a letter to the governor requesting a veto. LC did not take action on this item. Next was 10B3D regarding Assembly Bill 1521, Accountancy, California Board of Accountancy. This is our sunset bill. Staff indicated that since the prior CBA meeting, the bill was amended to address a conflict with AB 1076. And also, staff recommended that the CBA maintain its support position. The bill was approved by the legislature and is awaiting action by the governor. Staff submitted a letter requesting for the governor's signature. The LC did not take action on this item. Next, item E, Assembly Bill 1525, Cannabis Financial Institutions. Staff stated that the bill would provide a safe harbor for certain financial services, professionals, and organizations, CPAs, and accounting firms that provide services to those licensed to engage in the commercial cannabis industry. Staff recommended the CBA adopt a supportive amended position and provided a draft position letter for CBA approval. The LC approved 2 motions on this item. First, the LC recommends the CBA adopt a supportive amended position requesting the bill be amended to include any individual or public accounting firm authorized to practice in this state pursuant to the California Accountancy Act. This is a fully formed motion and does not require a second. I will turn this back to President Famelette for discussion and action.
Okay, thank you. Any questions from the board members?
Yes. I'm trying to pull up the 1525, but my memory is that when I studied this, the current version satisfies the concern that we had about, yes, the current version says a certified public accountant or certified public accounting firm which practices public accounting pursuant to section 5050 does not commit a crime, when it deals with cannabis. It seems like that probably satisfies the issue of covering public accountants, not and CPAs. If Elena wants, or if someone wants to comment, I'd appreciate it.
So, Mr. Jacobson, the direction from the board in the July meeting was to conduct research relative to what other amendments may be necessary in order to, that would be consistent with the bill, but would include public accountants and potentially other professions.
Right.
So in response to that, the language was put forth in the draft letter, which I think will be addressed in the subsequent motion from the chair. The wording, so within that would incorporate public accountants, as you noted, CPAs and CPA firms, but one item that was not included, one classification, so to speak, which was not included was those that are practicing pursuant to mobility. So by referencing our entire Practice Act, any individual or firm that's authorized to practice in California pursuant to our Practice Act would incorporate all of those different classifications of individuals that we regulate.
Thank you.
Is that responsive?
It is responsive. I'd also note that I think it was Michael who had brought up the enrolled agent issue, and I think that's something else that Lucy had alluded to. So
The matter of enrolled agents is addressed in the letter as well.
thank you.
Other questions? Let's have a vote.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
George Pamela,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
and Jose Campos.
Yes.
Thank you. If I may proceed, the second part of the motion related to this Assembly Bill 1525 was for the LC to recommend the CBA approves attachment to the draft support, if amended, position letter. This is a fully formed motion and does not require a second. I will turn this back over to President Familet for discussion and action.
Questions from other board members? Okay. Vote.
Jose Campos,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
George Pamela,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar,
Yes.
and Michael Savoy.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Moving on, Agenda Item 10B3F concerning Senate Bill 51, Financial Institutions Cannabis. Staff stated that the bill would establish cannabis-related charter banks and cannabis limited charter banks and cannabis limited charter credit unions to provide certain banking services to the cannabis industry. Staff indicated that this measure passed the Senate, but was held in the inactive file in the Assembly. So the author has more time to engage in discussions with the Governor's office. Staff recommended the CBA maintain its support position, and the LC did not take action on this item. Next, item 10B4A, Assembly Bill 5, Worker Status, Employees, and Independent Contractors. Staff indicated that this bill would codify the California Supreme Court's 2019 Dynamex decision that established revised criteria to determine whether a worker is an independent contractor or employee. Staff stated the bill includes an exemption for accountants and is not expected to impact the CBA's ability to contract with outside CPAs to consult on enforcement matters. Staff reported that since the mail-out, AB 5 was approved by the legislature and signed into law by the governor. The LC did not take action on this item. Next, item 10B4B. Senate Bill 551, Worker Status, Employees and Independent Contractors. Staff indicated that this bill would require operators of certain oil and gas production equipment and facilities to submit a report to the Department of Conservation regarding their total liability to plug and abandon all wells, decommission related production facilities, and provide site remediation. When creating this report, operators would be required to estimate the costs in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Staff recommended the CBA adopt a watch position and indicated the bill was approved by the legislature and is awaiting action by the governor. The LC recommends the CBA adopt a watch position on Senate Bill 551. This is a fully formed motion and does not require a second. I turn it back to Mr. Family.
Okay. Any questions from the board members?
Why did we think this bill's relevant to our body? Was it just because of this gap requirement on the liability?
That's correct, Mr. Campos, and it's more, in addition, it's mainly more of an advisory item, just to, so that way the CBA is able to be aware of these bills that are at least referencing or touching on accounting standards.
I'm not sure it feels all that relevant. I mean, I just don't know what it, I just think about consumer protection and the kinds of things we do or impact here. It just doesn't, even though, I mean, it's fine that they're having to report something and it has to be on a GAAP basis, but I don't know that it necessarily impacts our world. Oh, we got a motion. Cool.
Other-
But I guess my question, because I had the same thought, is I thought, well, what if they made a change at the last minute and they created a new California accounting rule, like the California GAAP? So I kind of thought, is it because we're watching to make sure that you're not diverging from?
So an earlier version of the bill was not as clean as it reads right now, simply referencing GAAP. The earlier version of the bill referenced a certain FASB circular number, I don't recall. And so there were some discussions, and then subsequently the bill was amended towards the end. I don't recall how that kind of plays out with our board meeting material deadlines, but since it was on our radar and we've been focused, there was another bill this year, AB 1181, that also touched on standards. So staff felt out of at least some prudence to put this on the meeting agenda.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I would differentiate this one from the charity one in the sense that even if they required it under some other make up your standard, as long as they don't make an accountant try to test on it or do something with it, then it probably doesn't really put our licensees in a problematic spot. But anyways, nothing further. Vote.
All right. Mark Silverman,
Abstain.
Michael Savoy,
Yes.
Katrina Salazar, Luz Molina Lopez,
Yes.
Dan Jacobson,
Yes.
Mary Jiang,
Yes.
George Family,
Yes.
Nancy Corrigan,
Yes.
and Jose Campos.
No.
And lastly, item 10B5A through M, this was a review and possible consideration of positions on legislation the CBA is monitoring. Staff reported that all of these items are bills being monitored by staff and include spot bills and legislation related to the cannabis industry. The LC did not take action on these items. And that concludes my report, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. Okay, we are going to go back into closed session and
Can't we
cover-
jump around to another agenda?
I think we've covered everything.
It's just a fun joke.
Like tomorrow's